The laughingstock. High Admiral Vexthor of the Cassiopean Dominion had witnessed many peculiar things during his 3 centuries of military service, but nothing quite prepared him for the sight before him. Through the crystalline viewport of his command bridge aboard the DSV Inevitable Victory, he stared at what the humans had the audacity to call a warship. Magnification, maximum, he ordered, his metallic scales rippling with barely contained disdain. The vessel that filled his view defied every principle of warship design the Dominion had perfected over millennia. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals, some sections clearly salvaged from civilian vessels. Crude armor plates had been welded at odd angles, giving it the appearance of a child's art project rather than a military vessel. Most bizarre were the numerous protrusions jutting out at random intervals, sensor arrays mixed with what appeared to be modified mining equipment, alongside weapons systems that looked cobbled together from spare parts. The ship's profile was asymmetrical, ungainly, and by all logical assessment, should have been aerodynamically impossible. Name and classification, Vexthor demanded. His intelligence officer, Lieutenant Zora, consulted her datapad. They call it the HMS Improviser, Admiral. Officially registered as a combat conversion platform. Originally a heavy cargo hauler before the humans modified it. Modified is a charitable term, Vexthor muttered. Butchered would be more accurate. He gestured at the largest protrusion, a massive cylindrical structure grafted onto the ship's dorsal section. And what, pray tell, is that monstrosity? Unknown, sir. Our sensors can't get a clear reading. The entire ship seems to be generating irregular energy patterns that confuse our scanning systems. That gave Vexthor pause. The Dominion sensors were the most sophisticated in known space. For them to be confused by what appeared to be junk, perhaps there was more to this vessel than met the eye. The HMS Improviser had appeared at the edge of the Arcturus system 3 days ago, just as the Dominion fleet was preparing to launch their invasion of the human colony. By all rights, they should have obliterated it immediately. But curiosity, and if Vexthor was honest with himself, a touch of professional pride, had stayed his hand. He wanted to understand what the humans were thinking. Sir, Zara interrupted his thoughts, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel. Put it through. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a human female. She appeared young by their standards, with dark skin and eyes that sparkled with barely contained amusement. Her uniform was as unorthodox as her ship, a mixture of standard military dress and what appeared to be civilian work clothes. High Admiral Vexthor, she said, offering a casual salute that would have gotten her court-martialed in the Dominion fleet. Captain Sarah Chen of the HMS Improviser. I couldn't help but notice your fleet seems to be trespassing in human space. Vexthor's scales rippled again, this time with irritation. Captain Chen, you faced the combined might of the Cassiopean Dominion's 7th Expeditionary Fleet, 16 capital ships, 32 cruisers, and over 100 support vessels. Your ship stands alone. I suggest you retreat while you still can. Chen's smile widened. That's very thoughtful of you, Admiral. But I'm afraid I can't do that. You see, there are 10,000 civilians on Arcturus Prime counting on us to protect them. Besides, she gestured at her ship's bizarre architecture. We've put a lot of work into the old girl. Seems a shame not to let her stretch her legs. Before Vexthor could respond, his tactical officer called out in alarm. Sir, the human vessel is. Spit it out, officer. It's transforming, sir. Vexthor turned back to the viewport. The HMS Improviser's seemingly random collection of protrusions was shifting, panels sliding apart to reveal hidden weapon systems. The massive cylindrical structure split into 3 segments, each unfolding like the petals of some mechanical flower. Most worrying of all, the irregular energy readings were intensifying. I should mention, Captain Chen said, still smiling, that before she retired to haul cargo, this ship used to be an experimental platform for testing quantum fold technology. We've made some improvements since then. Vexthor's blood ran cold as he finally understood. The humans hadn't cobbled together a warship from spare parts. They'd deliberately created a vessel that looked that way. Everything about the HMS Improviser was designed to be underestimated. All ships, battle stations, he roared, but it was already too late. The Improviser's quantum fold system activated, creating spatial distortions that played havoc with the Dominion fleet's formations. As his perfectly ordered armada descended into chaos, Vexthor heard Captain Chen's voice one last time. Let's show them what human improvisation really means. Method to the madness. The bridge of the HMS Improviser was nothing like the sterile command centers of conventional warships. Exposed wiring ran along the walls in carefully organized chaos. Holographic displays flickered beside old-fashioned LCD screens, and the air hummed with the sound of jury-rigged systems working in perfect harmony. Quantum fold successful, reported Lieutenant Maya Patil from her station, which appeared to be built primarily from repurposed gaming chairs and modified civilian hardware. The Dominion fleet's formation is completely disrupted. Captain Chen nodded, watching as the enemy vessels struggled to maintain their positions against the spatial distortions her ship had created. The Improviser's quantum fold system didn't just bend space. It created pockets of altered physical laws that played havoc with the Dominion's rigid tactical doctrine. Time to show them what else we've got up our sleeves, she said. Dr. Rodriguez, how's our signature project doing? The ship's chief scientist looked up from his console, which was decorated with dinosaur stickers. The random element generator is at full power, Captain. Those salvaged alien tech pieces we've been collecting are paying off beautifully. The Reichi was perhaps the Improviser's most brilliant innovation. By combining fragments of technology from dozens of different species, they had created a system that generated completely unpredictable energy patterns. To enemy sensors, the ship appeared to be simultaneously in multiple states of operation. Powered down, charging weapons, activating shields, and executing maneuvers all at once. Incoming fire, Maya called out. Several Dominion cruisers had regained enough control to launch a barrage of plasma torpedoes. Activate the umbrella, Chen ordered calmly. What looked like random pieces of space debris attached to the Improviser's hull suddenly activated, creating a dispersed shield network. The plasma torpedoes hit these points, and their energy was redirected, absorbed, and channeled into the ship's power grid. They're trying to adapt, reported Commander James Wong, the tactical officer. His station was a marvel of human ingenuity, a combination of military-grade targeting systems and modified virtual reality gaming equipment. The Dominion flagship is coordinating a new attack pattern. Chen grinned. Perfect. Time to introduce them to the kaleidoscope. The massive cylindrical structure that had unfolded earlier began to spin, each segment generating its own quantum field. The space around the Improviser fractured into multiple overlapping realities, making it impossible for enemy targeting systems to determine the ship's true position. On the Dominion flagship, High Admiral Vexthor was reaching a disturbing conclusion. They're not just improvising, he muttered, watching as his fleet's sophisticated weapons repeatedly failed to land a solid hit. Everything about this ship is designed to exploit our assumptions about proper military technology. The Improviser's apparently random construction masked a deeper purpose. Those odd angles deflected scanning beams. The patchwork hull played havoc with targeting algorithms designed to recognize uniform surfaces. Even the civilian components had been repurposed in ways their original manufacturers never imagined. Sir, Lieutenant Zora called out in alarm. 3 of our cruisers are reporting critical system failures. Something about the human vessel's energy signature is causing our quantum harmonizers to desynchronize. Vexthor realized too late that the humans had turned his fleet's greatest strengths into weaknesses. The Dominion ships relied on perfectly calibrated systems working in precise harmony. The Improviser's chaos-generating technology disrupted that harmony, causing cascading failures throughout their carefully engineered vessels. Back on the Improviser, Captain Chen watched as the enemy fleet struggled to maintain cohesion. Dr. Rodriguez, power up the resonance cascade. Let's give them a choice between retreat and system-wide failure. The scientist's fingers flew over his console, initiating a sequence that would amplify the improviser's disruptive effects exponentially. Ready, Captain. Though I should mention this might cause the coffee maker in engineering to explode. A necessary sacrifice, Chen said solemnly. Execute. The space around the improviser erupted with overlapping waves of quantum distortion. Dominion ships began losing power as their systems tried and failed to compensate for the impossible readings they were receiving. Physics itself seemed to protest as the human vessel's technology bent the rules of reality. High Admiral Vexthor watched in disbelief as his mighty fleet was effectively neutralized by a single vessel that looked like it belonged in a scrapyard. His tactical officers were shouting reports of failing systems, his engineers were warning of imminent core breaches, and his strategic algorithms were returning nonsensical results. The final insult came when Captain Chen's voice echoed through his command channel again. Admiral, I'm transmitting coordinates for a safe withdrawal route through the quantum disruption field. I suggest you use it. We wouldn't want your beautiful ships to suffer any permanent damage from our, what did you call it, butchered modifications. As he gave the retreat order, Vexthor realized that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their ability to think in ways that no other species would consider sane or logical. The HMS Improviser wasn't just a warship. It was a monument to humanity's knack for turning conventional wisdom on its head. And somewhere in the depths of the Improviser's engineering section, a coffee maker exploded, much to everyone's satisfaction. Turning point. The grand strategic chamber of the Cassiopean Dominion buzzed with agitation. Holograms of fleet commanders from across the Empire flickered above the circular table, each struggling to maintain their customary composure. At the center of the chamber, High Admiral Vexthor stood before the Supreme Military Council, doing something unprecedented in Dominion history, admitting defeat. The human vessel defies conventional analysis, he explained, his scales now a muted gray of professional humiliation. Our initial scans indicated a threat level of 0. Our tactical computers calculated a 99.9% chance of immediate victory. Instead, 16 of our most advanced warships require extensive repairs, and 3 will never fly again. The chamber erupted in overlapping frequencies of disbelief. Admiral Kazoth, commander of the home fleet, raised a gleaming appendage for silence. Perhaps, she suggested, you could explain exactly how this HMS Improviser accomplished such a feat. Vexthor activated a holographic display, showing the bizarre human ship. They've created something that weaponizes unpredictability itself. Every principle of warship design tells us this vessel shouldn't function. That appears to be precisely the point. Meanwhile, aboard the Improviser, Captain Chen was dealing with her own aftermath of victory. She walked through the ship's corridors, ducking under hanging cables and stepping over improvised power conduits, making her way to engineering. Status report, she called out, entering the organized chaos that was the engine room. Chief Engineer Lisa Murphy emerged from behind a wall of monitors, her face smudged with grease and sporting a wide grin. The good news is the quantum fold system exceeded all expectations, Murphy said, wiping her hands on her oil-stained coveralls. The bad news is we got about 48 hours before the random element generator needs a complete recalibration. Also, we're officially out of coffee makers. Chen nodded. The Improviser's systems weren't just unconventional. They required constant adjustment and innovation to remain effective. That was both their greatest strength and their most critical vulnerability. What about the kaleidoscope? She asked, referring to the massive reality fracturing system that had proven so effective. That's where it gets interesting, Murphy replied, leading her captain to a workstation covered in complex mathematical formulae. During the battle, we recorded some unexpected interactions between our quantum fields and the Dominion's harmonizer technology. Dr. Rodriguez thinks we might be able to use that too. She was interrupted by the ship's eye, which spoke through a cobbled-together array of speakers. Captain, priority transmission from Fleet Command. They're calling all available ships to the Proxima Centauri system. The Dominion is launching a major offensive. Back in the Dominion's strategic chamber, a new hologram appeared. The improviser engaged in combat. The assembled leaders watched in stunned silence as the human vessel performed maneuvers that their tactical computers insisted were impossible. We've analyzed their technology as best we can, Vex Thor continued. They're using quantum mechanics in ways our scientists claim violate fundamental laws of physics. When we attempted to simulate their systems, our computers returned error messages in 17 different languages, including 3 that don't exist. Admiral Kazoth's scales shifted to a deep purple of concern. Are you suggesting we cannot counter this vessel? I'm suggesting, Vex Thor replied carefully, that attempting to counter it using our traditional methods is precisely what they want us to do. The humans have created a warship that turns our own technological superiority against us. The more advanced our systems, the more vulnerable we are to their chaos-inducing technology. The implications sent ripples of unease through the chamber. For millennia, the Dominion had pursued perfect order and predictability in their military technology. Now they faced an enemy that thrived on disorder. On the improviser's bridge, Captain Chen studied the tactical display showing the Dominion fleet movements near Proxima Centauri. Their enemy was adapting, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of developing countermeasures to the improviser's technology, they were regressing, deliberately using older, simpler systems that were less vulnerable to quantum disruption. Interesting strategy, she mused. They're trying to become less advanced to fight us. She turned to her crew, seeing the same determination reflected in their eyes. Time to show them why that won't work. Dr. Rodriguez, remember the crazy idea you had about using the resonance cascade in reverse? The scientist's eyes lit up. The one that everyone said would probably tear a hole in space-time. That's the one. How quickly can you implement it? With proper testing and safety protocols. 3 weeks. He paused. Without them, about 6 hours. Chen smiled. You have 4. The Dominion is about to learn that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our ability to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible, even when everyone else says we're insane. As the improviser prepared to jump to Proxima Centauri, its systems humming with barely contained chaos, the ship's AI made an observation. Captain, I've been analyzing our combat data. There's a 92% probability that our next engagement will either save humanity or create a small black hole. Only 92%, Chen replied. Those are better odds than usual. Breaking point. The Proxima Centauri system blazed with weapons fire. 37 Dominion vessels, stripped of their most advanced technology, formed a battle line against the HMS Improviser. Their primitive weapons might have been less sophisticated, but they filled space with such a dense field of plasma fire that even quantum probability couldn't plot a safe course through. Hull integrity at 62% and falling. Maya reported, her gaming chair creaking as another blast rocked the ship. They're not trying to destroy us anymore. They're herding us toward their trap. Captain Chen watched the tactical display, noting how the enemy fleet had positioned itself. The Dominion had learned from their previous encounter, adapting in ways she hadn't anticipated. By reverting to basic weapons and manually controlled targeting systems, they'd partially immunized themselves against the improviser's reality-warping effects. Dr. Rodriguez, she called out, status on the reverse cascade. The scientist was working frantically at his station, dinosaur stickers now scorched from electrical feedback. The calculations are done, but there's a problem. The quantum harmonics are too unstable. If we attempt this without a proper focus point, we'll tear ourselves apart. Another hit rattled the bridge. Warning lights flashed across makeshift displays as systems throughout the ship reached their breaking points. The random element generator was spinning wildly out of control, producing energy patterns that even their own sensors couldn't interpret. Engineering to bridge. Murphy's voice crackled through the speakers. The kaleidoscope's main bearings are shot. One more rotation, and the whole assembly could shear off. Chen studied the enemy formation again. The Dominion ships had arranged themselves in a precise pattern. Too precise. Even with their simplified systems, they couldn't help falling back on their natural inclination toward perfect order. "Dr. Rodriguez," she said slowly, "what if we had multiple focus points?" The scientist's eyes widened as he followed her thinking. "You mean use their formation as? That's insane. The power requirements alone would." "We've got 37 potential focus points out there," Chen pressed, "all arranged in perfect geometric harmony. Even if it worked, we'd need to get them to maintain their exact positions for at least 45 seconds, in the middle of a battle." Chen's smile was predatory. "Leave that to me." She opened a channel to the Dominion flagship. "Admiral Vexthor, I believe it's time we had another chat." The Admiral's hologram appeared, his scales now a deep red of battle rage. "Have you come to surrender, Captain? Actually, I wanted to compliment you on your formation. The geometric precision is impressive, reminds me of the classical Cassiopean battle sculptures from your Third Dynasty, the ones in your Imperial War Museum." Vexthor's scales flickered with surprise. "You are familiar with our military history." "Of course. The Third Dynasty's contribution to spatial combat theory is required reading at our academy, particularly their work on harmonic fleet arrangements." Chen's voice took on a lecturing tone. "Did you know they believed that the perfect formation could actually generate its own defensive field through pure geometric resonance? Throughout the enemy fleet, sensors recorded a subtle shift in energy patterns. The improviser's erratic emissions were stabilizing, falling into rhythm with the Dominion's formation." "What are you doing?" Vexthor demanded, his tactical instincts screaming warning. "Testing a theory," Chen replied. "Dr. Rodriguez, initiate reverse cascade. Engineer Murphy, divert all power to the kaleidoscope. One last spin." The improviser's systems screamed as power surged through them. The huge cylindrical structure began its final rotation, fragments already breaking free from the strain. But instead of creating multiple quantum fields, it focused them all into a single beam that split into 37 precise streams. Each stream struck a Dominion vessel at exactly the point where their simplified shielding harmonized with their position in the formation. The perfect geometric pattern they'd created became their undoing, transforming their entire fleet into one massive quantum resonance chamber. "Sir," Zora's panicked voice cut through the Dominion command channel. "The humans, they're using our own formation to amplify their quantum effect. The harmonic feedback is..." Reality twisted. Space itself seemed to hiccup as the combined quantum fields reached critical resonance. For a fraction of a second, every ship in the Dominion fleet existed in multiple states simultaneously, powered up and down, intact and destroyed, present and absent. When space normalized, the Dominion fleet hung motionless. Every system on their ships had been quantum locked into a state of temporal uncertainty. They were effectively frozen in time. But the improviser hadn't emerged unscathed. The kaleidoscope had finally sheared off, taking a quarter of the hull with it. The random element generator had burnt out completely, and half the ship's systems were either offline or operating in ways their designers had never intended. "Damage report," Chen called out, pulling herself up from where the last attack had thrown her. "That's complicated," Murphy replied from engineering. "We're technically still here, which is something. But I'm reading at least 3 sections of the ship that exist in theoretical space only, and I think the backup coffee maker has achieved sentience." "Captain," Maya interrupted, "long-range sensors are picking up multiple signatures. A second Dominion fleet is approaching." Chen looked around her bridge at her exhausted but determined crew. The improviser was barely holding together. Most of its innovative systems were destroyed or critically damaged, and they faced a fresh enemy fleet. "Well," she said, Time to get creative again. Any ideas? The last laugh. The HMS Improviser drifted in space, surrounded by the quantum-locked vessels of the First Dominion Fleet, while a second battle group approached. In engineering, Chief Murphy had converted her repair tablet into a makeshift systems display after the main diagnostics went dark. I can give you maneuvering thrusters, life support, and maybe shields at 15%, she reported. Everything else is either destroyed or existing in what Dr. Rodriguez calls probability space. The quantum wake from our last attack is still interfering with local spacetime, Rodriguez added, his console now held together with emergency sealant and hope. We couldn't generate another cascade, even if we had the systems for it. Captain Chen stood in the center of her battered bridge, examining the tactical display. The Second Dominion Fleet was approaching cautiously, having witnessed the fate of their comrades. But they wouldn't stay back forever. What about the frozen fleet? She asked. Any way to unfreeze them? Theoretically, yes, Rodriguez replied. But the moment we do, their systems will complete their last commands. We'll be caught in the crossfire of every weapon they were firing when we locked them. The bridge crew fell silent, each person wrestling with the seeming impossibility of their situation. Then the AI spoke up through its remaining speaker. Captain, I've been analyzing the quantum mechanical state of our damaged sections, the ones existing in probability space. They're not actually damaged. They're existing in multiple states simultaneously. Chen's eyes narrowed. Explain. When the kaleidoscope sheared off, it created a cascade of quantum uncertainty through our hull. Those sections aren't gone. They're existing in every possible configuration simultaneously. If we could collapse the quantum state, we could choose which version becomes reality. Rodriguez finished, excitement building in his voice. But we'd need an enormous amount of power to control the collapse, and we'd only get one shot at it. Chen looked at the frozen Dominion fleet. What if we used their power cores? They're still running, just locked in temporal stasis. If we could channel the energy release from unfreezing them. Murphy's hands flew across her tablet. The numbers work. Barely. But we'd need a way to link their power grids to ours, and some way to control which sections of our ship collapse into which reality. The AI could do it, Rodriguez said. It's been mapping quantum states since the battle began. But Captain, there's no way to predict exactly what we'll end up with. We could end up with a fully restored ship, or we could collapse into our worst possible configuration and explode, the AI helpfully added. I estimate the odds of success at approximately 1 in several trillion. Chen smiled. In other words, just another day at the office. She straightened her scorched uniform. Begin preparations. Murphy, rig whatever connections you can to the frozen fleet. Rodriguez, help the AI map out the quantum states we want. Everyone else, prepare for whatever happens next. The Second Dominion Fleet had finally organized itself into attack formation. On their flagship, Admiral Kazoth observed the crippled human vessel with suspicion. They're planning something, she declared. No human crew would accept defeat this quietly. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, we're detecting power fluctuations in the frozen fleet. The human vessel appears to be linking with them somehow. On the improviser's bridge, Chen watched the final preparations. Jury-rigged power conduits now connected their ship to the frozen Dominion vessels, ready to channel the enormous energy release when they unfroze. The AI had mapped billions of quantum possibilities, identifying the configurations they needed. All preparations complete, the AI announced. Ready to initiate on your command. Though I feel compelled to point out this plan violates several fundamental laws of physics. Laws of physics are more like guidelines anyway, Chen replied. Execute. Time resumed for the frozen fleet. Energy surged through the makeshift connections as 37 power cores released their pent-up energy simultaneously. The improviser's quantum uncertain sections flickered like a deranged hologram as reality itself struggled to decide what should exist. The AI worked at impossible speeds, guiding the quantum collapse. Sections of the ship snapped into new configurations, some brand new, some borrowed from parallel possibilities where the damage had never occurred. The kaleidoscope reassembled itself, but different, changed by its journey through probability space. When the quantum dust settled, the HMS Improviser had become something unprecedented. Parts of its hull gleamed with new metal while others retained their patchwork appearance. The kaleidoscope had transformed into a crystalline structure that bent light in ways that hurt to look at. And throughout the ship, systems that had been destroyed found new ways to exist. Admiral Kazoth watched in horror as the human vessel's signature suddenly multiplied on her sensors. The Improviser now appeared to exist in several places at once, each version slightly different but equally real. "What are they?" she demanded. "According to our readings," her science officer replied, voice trembling, "they're quantum echoes. The humans haven't just repaired their ship. They'd weaponized the very uncertainty they created. Each version is equally real until we try to attack it." Chen's voice came through the command channel, accompanied by the hum of possibilities. "Admiral, your fleet has a choice. You can either engage us in combat, in which case we'll be forced to demonstrate just how creative we can be with our new configurations, or you can withdraw and explain to your superiors why attacking human space might not be the best long-term strategy." Kizoth stared at the quantum-shifted human vessel, understanding finally dawning. The Dominion had spent millennia perfecting the science of war, but the humans had turned war itself into an art form, unpredictable, innovative, and impossible to counter through conventional means. "All ships," she commanded, "withdraw to safe distance, and send word to High Command. The humans aren't just improvising anymore. They're rewriting the rules of reality itself." As the Second Dominion fleet retreated, Chen slumped in her captain's chair, surrounded by the quantum echoes of her impossible ship. "Damage report?" she asked, more out of habit than necessity. "That's going to take some time to figure out," Murphy replied. "We got systems that shouldn't exist, spaces that occupy multiple dimensions, and somehow we now have 7 working coffee makers, each brewing slightly different versions of reality." "Perfect," Chen said, closing her eyes with a smile. "Set a course for home. I think our ship just proved that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our determination. It's our absolute refusal to accept that anything is truly impossible." The HMS Improviser, now both one ship and many, turned toward Earth, leaving behind a very confused Dominion and a small section of space that would never quite follow the normal laws of physics again.